That was my first time in New York, and I was appalled. This place is filthy.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Geezerology Gazette for Monday, October, what is the date? I'm sorry, October 18th, 2021. I lost track there for a second. That was a little clip from the trailer of the documentary titled "The Velvet Underground" by Todd Haynes, which premiered on Apple TV Plus on Friday. This movie actually premiered at the Cannes Film Festival back in July. It was directed by Todd Haynes, who has been around a while. He's an accomplished filmmaker, but he was hired to do this documentary, and he made it. He chose to go the oral history route and pulled a lot of archive video clips, archive photos, some archived interviews with people who were there, and did a few talking head interviews in October of 2018 of a few people who were actually there. None of the talking heads were, any contemporary historians or critics or, any contemporary musicians who were influenced or anything like that. He kept everything in its time. And my first thought on there was not a whole lot of documentary material of the Velvet Underground back in those days, because the only time that they were ever filmed were by Warhol, and they were just basically used as an art exhibit for his multimedia presentations that he mostly in New York, and then he later toured across the country with the exploding plastic inevitable. So just a few short film clips, but nothing, no audio, live recordings or anything like that. So the material was pretty scant, but Haynes did a heck of a job of pulling together what was available and turning a story on it. And I thought he did a marvelous job of producing this in such a way that it really put you in that world. It really gave you a feeling of what was happening at the time. He gives a pretty good background on John Cale's background, on Lou Reed's background, and then it's about an hour and a half movie, a little over an hour and a half, and most of the movie, the bulk of the movie, talks about the Velvet Underground and tells you the Velvet Underground story from their formation, and then when they got hooked up with Andy Warhol, and then their work with Andy Warhol, and right on through the recording of their debut album, and then their break with Andy Warhol, and then the rest of their history is just pretty much glossed over at the end. So really, this is a movie. It's not really about the life of the Velvet Underground. It's basically a real good presentation on their early days and their times with Warhol, and arguably the period when the critics and historians look back on now and say that they were at their most powerful and their most inspirational. Although arguments could be made that the stuff that was glossed over at the end of their career was probably just as influential and powerful as then. So I'm thinking that at some point, some movie can be made about the latter years of the Velvet Underground, the Doug Yule years. Those years are were pretty sketched over, not much there. But I think that was mostly because Doug Yule declined to participate in this documentary, declined to be interviewed, and the reality is there aren't a whole lot of people who are still around to be interviewed, who were there to be interviewed in this movie, and it seems to me like Haynes probably grabbed pretty much everybody who was still alive, except for Doug Yule, right? He has interviews with John Cale. He has interviews with Mo Tucker. He has interviews with Sterling Morrison's widow. He has some interviews with some of the people who were in Lou Reed's early bands. His college girlfriend is interviewed there, and a couple of people from the factory. Mary Warnoff, I recall, is there. And I don't know if Bob and Dan have seen the movie, but if they did, they're probably as surprised as I have that we actually got a few scenes of Jackson Browne being interviewed, who worked with Lou Reed and John Cale on Nico's early albums, just right after the Banana album. Anyway, but yeah, this was especially if you're a Velvet Underground fan, this is a marvelous movie. I thought there's a lot been written, a lot been said, a lot of knockoff documentaries have been done, a lot of books and everything, but because Haynes went the route of trying to of immersing you in that world, and having the people who were there actually tell you what was happening at the time. I thought he did a really, really good job, especially when you consider that he probably that the documentary material is probably pretty slim pickings. There wasn't a whole lot of it, but he seemed to pull together just about everything that was available to present this movie. Bob, did you get a chance to look at it?
Yes, I did. I watched the entire documentary.
And
I finished it very frustrated. As somebody who's not necessarily a Velvet Underground fan, and I don't know that much about them. I mean, I know about them and stuff like that, but I'm not immersed in them. I came out feeling like I really didn't learn that much, and that there was a lot more that I wanted to know. And I'm aware that the footage and things like that of the early days of the Velvets don't exist, but I felt that Todd Haynes was trying to make them more of an art band than they were a rock and roll band. And I was very frustrated about all of the emphasis on Andy Warhol. And I wanted to know about the music. I wanted to know about the albums. I wanted to know about their influences. I felt that Mo Tucker was slighted. I know they interviewed her, but there was nothing about her drumming style, which was very unique. I did not know that Doug Yule declined to be interviewed, but the way Doug Yule has been beat up by so many people, I don't blame him. And I felt that the first half, they spent so much time dealing with Andy Warhol and all of that stuff. That would have been great if it was a 4-hour documentary, but it wasn't. Okay, and I think there was way too much emphasis put on there, and I felt like Haynes wanted to make it a Warhol John Cale thing more than Reed and the Velvet Underground and the other performers in the band. And there was one thing in there that I really was hoping they were going to pick up on. There were several people who commented about Lou Reed claiming early on he wanted to be a rock and roll star, but then he's involved in a band that's not going to make him a star because they were doing this avant-garde music that was not going to expose them to the masses. And then ultimately Reed went on to become a rock star. So my big question was, Reed a poser? And did he fall into this because it was a place to start? So I really wanted to see that explored some. And I really, and I wanted to hear more about the different albums and, the way things were produced. So I just, at the end of it, I just feel like I
Yeah, well,
didn't learn.
yeah. You were looking for a movie. You were looking for a different movie,
I
except
was
the
looking
movie
for a
that was
different
made.
movie, yes. And,
Yeah.
the back half of the documentary got more traditional. Other than Warhol giving them an opportunity to record, he really didn't, I don't think, had that much of an impact on the music. And the one person who was quoted in there about them going out to the West Coast, there was the actress, and, she mocked the peace love movement out on the West Coast. And New York in the 1960s was a horrible place to be. It was dirty, it was filthy, there was garbage on the streets, it was crime ridden, and it's not the New York that we know now. And so, to disparage what was going on the West Coast while you're living in a garbage dump, I thought was the height of pretentiousness. And so, yeah, the whole Warhol thing was kind of off-putting to me, and I wanted to know more about the music. And you hear constantly about how the Velvets are so influential, and they're rated now one of the seminal bands of the 60s. And you hear about all these people claiming how they influenced so many people. Well, where were those people who were influenced other than Jonathan Richman, who had the Modern Lovers? There was nothing about
Well,
what their music did to inspire
yeah,
people.
yeah, but
So I
like I
wanted
say,
to.
that was a different movie. That's a different movie.
I
I
know
mean,
that was that's what I wanted to
there are
see.
other
I wanted to
movies that
understand
cover
that,
that.
and it didn't give it to me. So
Yeah, there are other movies that cover that. I mean, this was not a movie about what uh, about the people who were influenced by the Velvet Underground. This to me was a movie about the people who influenced the Velvet Underground. It's like okay, we know we've known for years, and we've been hearing for years what how the Velvet Underground has influenced generations of musicians and everything like that. But this is a different tack. This is like, okay, well, where did they come from? And that's what this movie was.
well, see, I never really got. I don't feel that they ever really told me where they come from, and the I guess the first half of the documentary was kind of disorienting to me, and
Well, the first half of the movie, they were showing you clips of the people who influenced John Cale.
I know, but
Oh,
but like, that's my whole thing. It's like I don't know. I just came away from it not learning anything about. I didn't feel like I really learned anything about the Velvets, and I was shown all of this weird, bizarre stuff, that Warhol was doing, and I
well, not
didn't
only
really
Warhol,
understand.
but they gave you clips of John Cage and Lamont Young and all these people who were big influences on their early sound. You know, yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's kind of. I just think that you're looking for a different movie than what was presented.
Yeah, I guess if someone like you who's a big Velvet fan who knows probably everything there already is to know about them, I'm sure you enjoyed it. Me not knowing a lot of that stuff, I didn't. So yeah, maybe I need a more traditional documentary.
So, Bob, what's in the news this week?
Okay, well, I got a few things that I wanted to get into. First off, some time ago we talked about Rolling Stone magazine's revised 500 greatest songs list, and it's debatable whether Rolling Stone magazine is really that relevant any longer, and things like that. But the list is fun to debate about, and you can look at it and argue about why is that song there and why is this one gone and things like that. But if you just look at the list of 500 songs, it may not really say that much to you. So anyway, Newsweek magazine has done several articles where they delve into what happened to how some songs got elevated, others got dropped off, and things like that. And if you go to Newsweek.com, you can find these articles. And one of them is titled 20 Highest Climbers in Rolling Stone's List. Then another one is every hit removed from the list. And then another one is every hit added. And it's kind of an interesting thing to look at when you see some of the songs that got bumped out of here, that, songs I grew up with that I thought would last forever. For example, My Generation by The Who dropped 221 places. It went from number 11 down to 232. Purple Haze by Jimi Hendrix went down 233 places. Maybelline by Chuck Berry dropped. Let It Be went down 100 places. So and then if you look at the songs that went up, like Nothing But a G Thing by Dr. Dre went up 398 places from 427 to 29. So if you look at these articles, I think it gives you a really interesting perspective on cultural changes. So anyway, I would encourage you to go to newsweek.com and look up those articles and see what happened to some of those long-standing songs.
These these charts are done by like a poll of different people, right? Poll
Yeah,
of
they had
critics.
something like 225 people, that picked these songs and stuff. So of course, the people picking them today aren't the same ones that were picking the songs, 17.
Yeah, that's why I was going. It's like that's just that's a reflection of a younger generation of people.
Exactly, but like I say, if you look at the songs that dropped, the songs that rose and stuff, it gives you a nice microscopic view of our changing culture and changing interest, and the old guard like us falling by the wayside. So, but looking at how far some of these long-standing famous songs fell was a little bit of a shock, to an old guy who, says, man, there's nothing better than The Who, and now suddenly, and My Generation was, the song of a generation, obviously, and it's a generation that's passing. So I think it's interesting to look at where some of those songs wound up. So.
D, what's up?
Maybe Bob, just let me throw this in. You would think Rolling Stone, and I tend to agree. I really don't think they're very relevant anymore for a number of different reasons. But aside from that, you would think they would either take the extra effort and keep it divided by decade or genre. That way, you could at least show, in this decade there was this trend, this many, album. This was a trend in this decade. But to just kind of keep changing it around, it's like, how many ways can you bake a cake? So anyway, I think they should have at least tried that to, obviously, like a Rolling Stone is not going to appeal to somebody that's, 22 years old as it does to our generation.
Right.
And I don't know how do you stack that up against, music that's 40 and 50 years apart. You could say the same thing for our parents' music of, the jazz music of the 40s and whatever, with bebop and all that. Well, yeah, I think they could have stuck to separating it by either decades or genres. And that's just my little piece on that. So.
And then I got, if you would indulge me, I've got one other thing to throw out real quick because I just thought that was such a delightful story. Ed Asner, the actor that recently departed, is a Kansas City native and still has, and he had family that stayed here in Kansas City, including an older brother named Benjamin. And Benjamin Asner wound up owning a very influential record store here in Kansas City, starting back in the late 60s and going through the mid 80s. And the Kansas City Star has done a profile piece about that. It's going to be a little hard to find because if you go to kansascity.com, the webpage for the Star, this article is subscriber only, so it's going to be behind a paywall. If you're a subscriber to the Star, I would recommend reading it. It is right now on the Google News app feed, so you can read it there. And it's a delightful story about how Benjamin Asner, who's 14 years older than Ed, actually fell into becoming owning a record store. And he started out very, very quickly. He started out dealing with freight damaged merchandise, and he would buy this stuff and then resell it. And there was a high school kid who wound up over at Asner's house, went there with his boss to look at some suits, and he saw all of these records and 8-track tapes and stuff that Asner had from these freight sales. And this high school kid took those and started selling them at the dorms at the University of Kansas. And Asner said, hey, there's something here. So opened up a record store, and it became very, very popular. Was a place where people would line up to buy concert tickets. At one point, they estimated about 2,500 kids a week would come through the store. And of course, they also, sold smoking paraphernalia and things like that. So there was a head shop deal there too. And, various performers would come into the store, and Ed Asner would even show up occasionally. So it's a really charming, interesting story about, how we got music, back in the day. So anyway, if you can find it, I would encourage you to read it. It's a fascinating little article. Anyway, that's it from me.
Man, I miss those places.
I do too.
I remember Dee and I spent a lot of time together. What was that? What was that one in Kirkwood? That store like that?
Oh, that was
The Spectrum.
the
Is that it?
Spectrum. Yeah,
Was that the name of it? Yeah.
yeah, Spectrum.
Yeah.
Headshot. There's still a couple around. There's one in University City on Delmar, the big one. Street Side Records. Is it Street Side? I'm trying to think. But it's right on Delmar, and they've got thousands of vinyl there and everything. So
yeah, we've got several in KC. There's a place called Revolution, downtown KC, and you walk in and it's like a time trip back, And I mean, the beads are there and the posters and the incense and all that stuff, and they sell vintage stereo equipment and all the albums and things. And yeah, it's like walking back into 40, 50 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah, so I spent many hours of my youth in those places, and in fact, I think that's probably the Spectrum. That one I was talking about I think that was where I bought all my Velvet Underground albums. Yeah, you couldn't find those just anywhere,
And of course, we all should remember Bear Booking Records.
I was just thinking the same thing in Springfield. Yep.
yeah,
Yep.
The record store manager.
The guy named Joe. Yeah, he went off and opened his own record store called Beggar's Banquet, and it wasn't too long before he became the first video rental store. The old VHS cassettes that was the first place that I ever encountered where you can actually rent a movie. That guy.
Yeah,
So
even my little small backward hometown of Poplar Bluff had a head shop and record store. So.
I like the smoking paraphernalia. Yeah, that's pretty funny. Randy Bachman. There's an interesting story that I saw on CNN.com this week, and apparently there's a story that came from the Guardian. Randy Bachman, Bachman Turner Overdrive earlier than that of the Guess who I think is hooking up with Burton Cummings to relive some of their past glories from the Guess Who. But anyway, 45 years ago, Bachman he had this acoustic guitar. It was a Gretsch guitar that he had. He saved up about $400 and went to a music store and bought this beautiful Gretsch guitar when he was a kid. And that's the guitar that he used to write most of his, or not most of, but a lot of the big Guess Who and even Bachman Turner Overdrive songs on it. 45 years ago, Bachman Turner Overdrive was playing a concert somewhere, and he went and left the guitar there in a venue for the roadies to pack up and do whatever they do, pack it away and transport it to where they were going. And during that process, there was a break in the chain of custody of this guitar, and it disappeared. So So Bachman said he was heartbroken over this. This was the guitar he had since he was a kid, the one he used to write music on, and he still used it in concert and his live shows and everything. And it disappeared. It went away. And he spent years, he spent decades looking for this guitar, trying to find out what happened to this guitar. He would call pawn shops. He would go on the internet and try to see if he could find it in a pawn shop or whatever. Never was successful. Well, this guy, this a little bit of involved story. Well, there's this guy who specialized just as a hobby, not as a professional, but this guy who liked to go on the internet and solve mysteries. In fact, he spent a lot of time trying to track down and trying to figure out the whole D.B. Cooper story, right? Well, this guy had heard about Randy Bachman's lost guitar, and he started searching the internet, looking at pictures and things like that. And he found what he thought might have been Randy Bachman's guitar, and it was in Japan. And some guy in Japan who's a recording artist in Japan, he thought that this guy, he saw a video and he said, that looks like it may be Randy Bachman's old guitar. And so he contacted Bachman and showed him this video or this photo or whatever it was. And Bachman said there's a couple of distinguishing characteristics on the guitar. And he looked at it, he said, that's my guitar. So through a series of events, Bachman got a hold of this guy in Japan and told him the story. And the guy in Japan said, well, I didn't steal this guitar. I bought this guitar. And Bachman said, I know. Yeah, I'm not accusing you of stealing the guitar and everything. He said, but I'm sure that's my guitar. And he said, and so Bachman started negotiating with this guy and asked this guy, I would really like to have that guitar back. And the guy in Japan told him, well, okay, I kind of get it. He said, I'll get you this guitar back, but on one condition, that you replace it with basically the same guitar. And Bachman's going, well, they haven't made those guitars in years, and there weren't that many of them made in the first place. But so Bachman went on another search, and he did find another guitar that had like consecutive serial numbers. This guitar was made in the same batch. He called this guy up in Japan and said, I found a replacement guitar. It's the same guitar. It was just, it came off it was just made at the same time as this one was made. And Bachman paid like tens of thousands of dollars for this replacement guitar. Now he's got this guitar, and now he's arranging to fly to Tokyo to hook up with this guy and exchange guitars with him. And that was such a cool story. There's this is all spelled out in that story at CNN.com. If you want to go read and get all the details. But yeah, it was just this Byzantine, way to do it. But yeah, Randy Bachman found the guitar that he's been looking for the last 45 years, and he's about to get it back, and everybody's happy.
And another interesting little guitar story. Mike Rutherford, the guitarist for Genesis, who's presently on tour, is playing on stage. Well, okay.
They canceled.
Okay. Well, when he was on stage playing recently, was playing with a $200 Squire guitar. So he was,
I did read that. Yeah, I did see that.
So it proves that you put something cheap in the hands of a master, and he can make it sound great.
Speaking of Genesis, there was further development on that this week. Nothing officially has changed, but there's apparently some speculation among people who are super fans and know Genesis and or Genesis heads or whatever. But there's a lot of feeling out there that there's a little more to this than COVID. That Collins was just in bad shape, and they said apparently one of the last shows that they did, Collins kept forgetting lines. He kept forgetting lyrics, and and there were whole sections where he just had to let the other guy sing the passages for him because Collins would get lost or whatever. And apparently it was so bad that Tony, at the end of the show, they go and they come back to the stage and take a bow at the end of the show. I saw that on the clip of the first show that they did. Well, apparently the last show or the second last show that they did, Tony Banks refused to go back out on stage to take a bow because he's so embarrassed about how bad it was. So, so anyway, there's that speculation that's running around that this has a little more to do with COVID than they were letting on. And another real quick thing is that Peter Gabriel did a interview with this Italian magazine in which he said that he's actually got a band together and they're working on a new album. He hasn't released an album in 20 years. And he says they're working on one, probably going to be released sometime next year. Okay, Monday, 65 years ago, Monday, Elvis Presley, who was 21 years old at the time, he pulled into this Memphis gas station and he attracted this little crowd of autograph seekers. And so the guy who on the gas station, the guy by the name of Ed Hopper, he walked out to where Elvis was drawing a crowd and asked Elvis, "Come on, move on. I want to, you're getting away with doing my business here." And it got a little heated. So Hopper gave Presley a little slap on the head, and then Elvis hauled off and punched him in the face. It started a little bit of a brawl there in the parking lot. Police were called, and it turns out that the gas station manager and the attendant who was on duty at the time were charged with assault and fined $25 for this incident. Elvis got off without any charges because the other two guys are the ones apparently who started it, they say. Wednesday, 44 years ago Wednesday, Ronnie Van Zant, Steve Gaines, Cassie Gaines from Leonard Skinner were killed in a plane crash, along with manager Dean Kilpatrick. Their rented plane ran out of fuel and crashed into a densely wooded thicket in the middle of a swamp in Gillsburg, Mississippi. They were due to play at Louisiana University that evening. Another plane crash.
That was let me just jump in. Some consider that to be rock and roll's second heartbreak. The first one was Buddy Holly and Big Bopper and
Leonard Skinner were peaking at that time. They were big. I mean, that was a shock because Leonard Skinner was at the toppermost of the poppermost at that time when that happened, to use an old John Lennon phrase, right?
Right.
Friday, 52 years ago Friday, Paul McCartney publicly denied rumors that he was dead.
I remember all that.
Yeah, it's been going. All these rumors have been catching fire. We talked about this in the last week or two. All these rumors are starting to catch fire, and McCartney and his girlfriend Jane Asher were off on holiday somewhere, and they came back and heard all these rumors, and then waited a few days, and then Paul finally showed up in public and said, "Hey, I'm still here. I'm still alive. This isn't true." And Sunday will be the 44th anniversary of Keith Richards being fined $205 after admitting having cannabis, Chinese heroin, Mandrax tablets, and a revolver at his home in Chelsea in the UK. Later that evening, Keith and his girlfriend, Anita Pallenberg, accidentally set fire to their hotel bedroom. Keith Crazy was a little active in those days, 44 years ago in 1977.
You know, those of us who are denying climate change and all the other things going on should really be ashamed of the fact that we're not going to leave much of a world behind for Keith. I think he's going to outlive all of it. He's going to be like
That's right.
Cockroach that crawls out after a nuclear war.
Today, Monday, is the 95th birthday of singer, songwriter, and guitarist, St. Louis native Chuck Berry. He would have been 95 today. He left us in March of 2017 at the age of 90. Tuesday will be the 76th birthday of singer Jeannie C. Riley. D?
Harper Valley PTA.
You got it. You got it, buddy. That was a big hit, Harper Valley PTA. That was the #1 hit in 1968. And also that year, she won a Grammy as the best female country singer of that year. Tuesday will be the 71st birthday of Procol Harum lyricist Keith Reed. He was the guy who wrote the lyrics to all the Procol Harum songs, except, they did a few covers, but all the original Procol Harum songs, Keith Reed wrote the lyrics. He was a non-performing musician. He was just a lyric writer. Wednesday would have been the 71st birthday of Tom Petty, who died in October 2017. He died just a couple of weeks before his 67th birthday. Also Wednesday, the 50th birthday of Calvin Broadus, better known as Snoop Dogg, or in some circles, Snoop Doggy Dogg, or in other circles, just as Dog, or just Snoop.
And Scott, we might want to add too, he's a good friend of renowned cook and book author Martha
Stewart.
Martha Stewart, yes.
Snoop Dogg had a #1 album in 1993 called Doggy Style. On Thursday will be the 81st birthday. He's still around. It'll be the 81st birthday of South African keyboard player, guitarist, and vocalist Manfred Mann. He had a #1 single in 1964 with Do Wah Diddy Diddy. Mm-hmm. And later with Manfred Mann's Earth Band, he had hits included Blinded by the Light, Spirit in the Night, and had several hits in the 60s. Thursday will be the 75th birthday of Chicago trumpet player Lee Luckman, who wrote a few of the songs for Chicago, including "If You Leave Me Now," their #1 single in 1976. Friday will be the 79th birthday of Bobby Fuller, of the Bobby Fuller Four. I Fought the Law and the Law Won.
Law Won.
Right? Later covered by The Clash. Fuller died in July 1966 from asphyxiation. His car was parked outside of his apartment. He was inside of his car, and I'm not sure how he died, but something weird happened. Friday will be the 76th birthday, would have been the 76th birthday of Leslie West, formerly of Mountain. He died in December of 2020 of a heart attack. He also, I didn't know this, in 2011, he had his right leg amputated from diabetes. He had diabetes. Also on Friday will be the 75th birthday of Eddie Brigati of the Rascals. initially known as the Young Rascals. Friday will be the 65th birthday of punk icon Stiv Bators. He was the frontman of the Dead Boys, which was the first American punk band that became huge. Saturday will be the 65th birthday of country singer, actor, and film director Dwight Yoakam. I know of Dwight Yoakam. I mean, I know the name. I'm not running in country circles. I'm not real familiar with him, but this note here says that he is most famous for his pioneering country music. He has sold over 25 million records with 5 Billboard #1 albums, 12 gold albums, and 9 platinum albums. He is the most frequent musical guest in the history of The Tonight Show. Interesting little tidbit.
Yeah, I like Dwight. He's one of the few country performers I really like.
He'll be 65 on Saturday. Turning 62 on Saturday, Al Yankovic. Weird Al. Eat it.
Yeah.
Like a surgeon.
Yeah.
The biggest hits. Sunday, 2 birthdays on Sunday, will be the 85th birthday of former Rolling Stones bassist Bill Wyman. 85. Wow. That just struck me how old he is.
Let me just interject that Bill Wyman, I think he officially quit the Stones about 10 years ago. He was just getting really tired of touring. And I think, he told the rest of the band, look, I want to kind of spend the rest of my years just very quietly and with my grandchildren. And he did, I know he was one of the founding members or one of the original members.
Yeah. Well, he's touring again now with his backing band, the Rhythm Kings.
Really?
Yes. Yep. He's a bass player, and Georgie Fame is their singer. And Albert Lee plays the guitar with the Rhythm Kings.
And dovetailing on that, if I'm not mistaken, I believe Mick Jagger was quoted at one point saying, "I don't want to become a middle-aged rock and roll star." I guess he's okay with being a senior citizen rock and roll star.
Also on Sunday will be the 75th birthday, would have been the 75th birthday of Jerry Edmonton, the drummer from Steppenwolf. He was killed in a car crash in 1993. But Edmonton actually survived all those early John Kay years. He and John Kay and Goldie McJohn were the 3 constants in that band that was constantly changing guitar players and bass players. Jerry Edmonton, whose brother was Dennis Edmonton, who was also known as Mars Bonfire, who was the guy who wrote Born to Be Wild. Anyway, anniversaries and birthdays. Any other news items before we wrap it up?
I got one little short thing I'd like to kind of throw out if we've got a second. Everything seems to be all Rolling Stones these days, so this is going to tie in with that. On their current tour, the Stones have stopped performing one of their biggest hits, which is Brown Sugar, apparently due to complaints that it's now culturally offensive. And that song, which came out in '69, has been a staple, of their live shows for decades. And it's estimated that it's been played at least 1,136 times live. And it's the second most played song in their entire catalog. But anyway, what's interesting is the differing statements from the Glimmer Twins. Jagger says that they just decided to retire the song, because it's been played so many times, and we'll put something else in and see how it goes. Keith Richards, however, who co-wrote the song, said it wasn't a casual decision and that in reality it was taken out because of complaints that the song's lyrics were offensive because they reference slavery and are therefore racist. Richards, however, says he's kind of mystified by that because he said it actually talks about the horrors of slavery and doesn't, glorify it or glamorize it. So anyway, interesting differing statements from the Glimmer twins. So.
The Stones. Go ahead, D.
Bob, wasn't Brown Sugar on the Sticky Fingers LP?
Yes, it was.
Correct.
Yeah,
50,
I think, And I don't know. I mean, maybe they just dropped it for it doesn't work in their set or whatever. I mean, it's the first I've heard of it, but I just can't imagine.
Oh no! There's no that it's culturally offensive. That's why they quit playing it. Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, the lyrics, if you listen to Keith Richards, he said it wasn't intended that way. It was intended to, glorify it. But I don't know. That's I'm surprised that they would sort of give in. But then again, why make a big fuss about it? Just you got 40 other songs to choose from to play live, so just move on. But
I don't know, but if you're a diehard Rolling Stones fan and you go to their concert, I think you want to hear Brown Sugar. So
I think they had to address it because they were getting a lot of it was creating some controversy.
Well, that means then people haven't listened to the lyrics, and of course, when Mick Jagger sings, you can't understand anything he's saying. So
that's what I'm saying.
If you can't understand what he's singing. At first glance, it could be misconstrued, because he's singing about, brown sugar and you're thinking about, the sex with a black girl and all of that. But if you actually read the lyrics, it does talk about the horrors of slavery. Yeah. So,
right.
Yeah.
I don't want to add my little 10 cents in. I just think some people are a little butthurt.
Well, I agree,
And I understand they don't want to, deal with it and get into it. They want to keep rolling on. So.
A Rolling Stone gathers no moss.
That's it.
Absolutely.
Speaking of, they added one more show to their to the end of their tour. They're going to finish up their tour at the Hard Rock Live at the Seminole Tribal Casino here in Hollywood, Florida. It's a little 7,000 seat venue. Thought it was interesting. They're going to play in a little 7,000 seat theater. Yeah, that'd be a hell of a place to see a show like that. But
yeah, it would.
Yeah, but yeah, my Social Security checks aren't big enough to cover the cost of that one.
Yeah, I went to their 2015 tour when they came to KC, and it was a gut check moment about whether I wanted to spend that money. But ultimately, I said, yeah, it's a bucket list thing. I got to do it. So I did.
Yeah, I just thought it. Okay, well, thanks for joining us, everybody. The Geezerology Gazette will be back next Sunday with another edition. We will be here on Wednesday for a music discussion. We're not 100% sure what that'll be yet, but we'll be here on Wednesday with something. And I want to come back with another quick take next Friday, probably just bouncing off the VU documentary. I want to do a quick look at the VU discography to tie in with that documentary. So I'll do that next Friday. But thanks for joining us, everybody. We'll see you again.
All right. Take care, everyone.